Setting goals is one of the most regarded things that you could do. After all, what is more professional that you could try to approach? You want to improve your career, you want to develop yourself, you want to improve your life. But behind those caveats and these expectations you put towards yourself when you set up a goal, what you actually understand is what goals really are. And to put it short, goals are essentially desires. Desires that we often put as more valuable than other desires. And this is when we have to come to understand why we tend to do the things that we want to do. After all, what we oftentimes consider procrastination are desires that go against our will, that are avoiding us, preventing us from doing the things that we actually are supposed to want. Now, this is where the ideology comes around it, that says, you have to want this thing because this desire cares about your well-being. And other desires such as consumption or entertaining yourself or having fun with a hobby is oftentimes not considered to be a valuable desire. Now, this is not what you may hear oftentimes in the self-help circles. Sure, having some free time may be a really good thing for your well-being. But notice how desire is in this case getting organized. We oftentimes don't even recognize that we're dealing with a desire and see it more than a goal that we tend to strive forwards. It oftentimes isn't even our own idea. Interestingly, this is also the way capitalism tends to work. Yes, the thing that it tends to emphasize a lot is the consumption and the production of things. Now, being a good citizen in this sense is to avoid consumption and be as much as productive as you can. But isn't it strikingly similar that the way we tend to put off consumption and to embrace production, the way the system tends to work? Because the people that are producing and the people who want to make a career, to succeed or to become, let's say, an entrepreneur, are trying to make you consume the product more and more and more, so they can be, in this sense, to be considered successful. Success is oftentimes considered by other people and what other people think of you. So if a lot of people would buy your book, this would make you a successful author. If a lot of people would buy a product, this would make you a successful entrepreneur. So the entire system, in order to maintain itself, is so essentially based on other people's validation that we oftentimes don't even realize that it's based on other people's validation. So this is the irony of going beyond the hierarchy. Now, you may hear it in the sense that when you're talking about the 1% of people that are the most successful, in fact, all of their success is based on finding approval by the mediocre, the majority of the people that find to support them. Which creates almost this paradox between this middle class or this mediocre people and the 1% that people try to create this binary about. In fact, there isn't really a binary because the 1% is the part of the society that tends to find the most approval. And ironically, the way it tends to build itself up is by trying to reject the mediocre or the average, by making being part of the upper system more desirable. So to put it more blunt, success is about status, and status is about other people's validation, what they think about you. Now, if you're talking about goals, the way we tend to organize our desires is but by what most people would find the most approval in. If you have the desire to be an entrepreneur, this will be a much greater and validated desire than, for example, binging on some snacks or watching some Netflix. Now, you may be at this point thinking, if all the goals that I set towards myself are about social approval, and I don't want to live according to social approval, what on earth should I set? Because in some way I also want to live my life, and probably the goals that I set tend to be the goals that I find to be most desirable and want to do them the most. But to come up around as a conclusion for it, instead of trying to set this big achiever goals, try to get more primitive and simple around it. What is it that makes you desire to do them the most? In this way, you have to do this detachment process between the expectations of the symbolic value, what we find so desirable around them, and the actual value that they create for us. Now, the gift of work and the gift of producing something, sure, it may be great for other people, and a lot of people would love it. But because we're so obsessed on the outcome and the meaning behind it, we oftentimes forget about the action, about the joy of creating a work. And this is what makes also so many goals unachievable. Because we are so focused on the big picture and we are so vague about it that we actually rarely consider the deep actions behind them. And a great part of the planning process is actually to make our goals more actionable. Even though it shouldn't be it more the other way around, by figuring out what we want to do with our life and then thinking how it would value the market. You see, we're doing it the other way around. We look at the market to see what's the most desirable and from that define our actions. And this is the twist that I want to present in this video. Start out with the actions. Start out with the things that you tend to enjoy doing as a practice. Now, this isn't a simple advice as saying just follow your passion, be always super excited around it. Sure, on the one hand, it's great to find joy within the work that you're doing. But the more important question is to think about how do you want to live your life? And is the way you tend to live your life really in accordance with your goals? Because essentially your life is built out of the days that you're living. And so to decide what kind of goal you want to set is to determine how you want to live every single day. Because what makes a goal so desirable is in a few years it will probably determine the way we tend to live our everyday life. But because we set such an importance around the goals and we don't think much about the way we want to live our life, it creates this dissatisfaction. We live for its work, but the reason why we tend to do it is widely neglected. So think about it. How do you want to live your life? And if you could figure out the way you want to live your life, probably from there you could decide the actions. And from those actions you could decide a career. But there is no other way around than to first of all determine the question for ourselves. So this is the ultimate question of work and goals. How do I want to live my life? Because work will make up the majority of your life either way. Now this may come around as a little philosophical, but it is actually one of the most important questions we will ask ourselves. If we don't think about how we want to live our life, somebody will think it for us too. And we probably may not like the way we tend to live around it. Now probably you may also like the idea, but it's better to be conscious around the way we tend to live. Because from this consciousness we actually come to create a life that we would actually want to live. Now to put it short, the goals we set determines the lives we tend to live. And the life we tend to live is actually what makes everything worthwhile. So if you live a shitty life, your goals must be probably really shitty as well. Thanks for watching.